appreciate you joining us in the Trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics, as always. And we are in our brand new digs, our new studio. Man, we're in the new building, new studio, everything's spanking new. Got to like it. And we got our special guest, and I mean very special guest, Solomon Wilcots. He is everything you need to know about the National Football League. Solly can handle that for you, man. Player, broadcaster, you name it, he can do it. And he's done it well. Actually, star-studdedly. Solly, what's up, my man? How you be?
Dave, hey, I'm doing great. Spent all night digging and pouring through the entire NFL schedule, 272 games amongst the 32 NFL teams. Five games are going to be played internationally. We kick it off on a Friday after the season opener. We're going to have a Friday night game. And I guess if you're going to play on Friday night, you might as well be in Brazil, right?
Why not? Why not?
The Philadelphia Eagles and the Green Bay Packers. So, look, the NFL is going to newer heights. Think about it. You've got Christmas games being played on Netflix. They're going to be streaming. I'm told each game sold for $75 million. So you're talking $150 million just for the rights to two games.
Wow.
Christmas used to be owned by the NBA. That was sort of their coming out day on their schedule. Well, the NFL now owns Christmas. We own Thanksgiving. We're getting ready to take over President's Day weekend. Super Bowl weekend is ready to become a national holiday, so just get ready.
It is. It really is amazing. I mean, the National Football League is a marketing machine. There is no doubt about it. I mean, look at all the hype the scheduling release gets. It's unbelievable. It gets better ratings than the NBA or National Hockey League playoff games do. Man, it's crazy.
Yeah, we now have NBA players trolling the NFL. Saying that they could find 30 guys that could play in the NFL today. Right. Really just doing that to kind of steal some of that shine that's totally on the National Football League. I've been over to the UK. I've been to the league offices. We have league offices, right? And in London. And I've seen the blueprint. I've seen the future. You have people in the UK and in London and in Germany who love NFL football.
Right.
They're huge fans of our sports. They know the players. They know the coaches. They know the coordinators. They know how teams are to be built. They're into the data analytics. They're into the fantasy football. And so our game is alive and well. Commissioner Roger Goodell has done a great job. Howard Katz and his staff, Mike North, who runs the scheduling. Howard Katz was a programming executive for the networks. I worked under him when I was at ESPN. And of course, Disney was our parent company for ABC and ESPN. And, worked with him because he was in our offices at NFL Films, working next to Steve Sable and still running a lot of the stuff at the league offices. He's a brilliant man, and he's the guy that kind of connects our game to television, so that the best players and the best teams are getting seen at the right time, right in prime time, and on certain Sundays when you have a Joe Burrow and a Patrick Mahomes matchup. Howard Katz and his staff, Mike North, those are the guys that are making it happen. They're behind the curtains and serving the NFL very well.
Boy, are they ever. And it was definitely a juggling act for sure. I mean, you have so many partners to take care of, so many teams to be fair and equitable to as best you can. I mean, that is one tall task. And I think the Bengals, I thought they'd be going to one of the games this year internationally, and they didn't. I don't see it not happening next year. I mean, I think they're going to be a candidate to be over in Germany or wherever the case may be. It's been, I think, 8 or 9 years since they've had an international game. So I think their time's rolling around here.
Well, I certainly hope the Bengals give me a call when they go back. I remember the last time they were there, I was still working at CBS. They gave me a call to want to kind of be a presenter for the team. I wanted to do it. But of course, I had a day job and I couldn't get off work in order in order to do it. So, yeah, I think we have to go back to like 2014, 15, 2016 since they last played across the pond. But there's no doubt. You look at this year, it's a lot of the young quarterbacks. You're going to have Caleb Williams going across the pond.
Right.
He's only in his rookie year. And you're going to have Jordan Love, who's going to be playing, obviously, down in Brazil. He and Jalen Hurts. You have a lot of the young quarterbacks are going to be featured. Drake May, the Patriots, they're going to be playing. Aaron Rodgers, of course, and Daniel Jones, who plays for the Giants. They're going to get seen over there. But I could foresee, the Joe Burrows, the Tuas, the Justin Herberts being sort of the next wave because they have captured so many fans for the National Football League and they spiked the ratings. So, yeah, I could see maybe by next year the Bengals may have to play their part and go on over there and play a game.
So I remember when I was a player, the first thing I looked at when the schedule was, and it wasn't a big release show like this or anything, but when the schedule was finally available, what kind of primetime games we got? What's going on? What kind of big time coverage are we going to have for this football team this year? And then I'd look, when are the division games being played, and how many times do we have to go on the road back to back, and do we have to go on the road back to back to back, all those kind of things. The Bengals, for the first question was answered when the schedule came out. The Bengals have 5 nationally televised games, and then they've got 3 others that are at 4:15. So 8 of their games, almost half the schedule, the National Football League looked at as important enough and can draw an audience that would be let's put them in these slots. That's pretty impressive.
Look, Joe Burrow, he moves the needle.
Yep.
He's a guy that even in cities like Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Cleveland, where Bengals aren't supposed to rate that high or not supposed to be well liked, there's a great appreciation for his blue collar nature and his sort of nuanced way of playing the game. He's one of the rare quarterbacks, Dave, and you know this, that's not afraid to get his jersey dirty,
right,
in order to win games. In fact, he almost prefers for it to be that way. And now he's learning, hey, I got to take care of myself. And Aaron Rodgers, I remember during the 2021 season when Aaron Rodgers was with the Packers, they came in here and played a game. And after the game, he went over and told Joe, hey, man, you got to stop taking these hits, man. You got to take care of yourself if you're going to last in this league. And now you see Joe being more intentional and understanding. And it's going to still take some time for a guy who's always played the game, not really trying to be careful. He's so aggressive and he attacks defenses. Just ask Wink Martindale, right? Remember, used to be the defensive coordinator with the Baltimore Ravens.
Right.
Joe's a killer, man. I love the way that he plays football. And I don't want to see us take his stinger away from him. I get it. Your best ability is your ability to be available.
Yep.
And so that's important. But when he's really remember when he went out last year to San Francisco? That was about the time when he got right. He was just starting to feel good, after the calf injury and everything. And, man, he shredded the 49ers. And that's one of the best defenses in the NFL.
Right.
He's done that to the Baltimore Ravens. When he is on top of his game, I'll take him over anybody else. And considering he has a winning record against Patrick Mahomes, I'll even take him over Pat Mahomes.
I hear that. The interesting thing, and no surprise, these games are spread out. It's the first nationally televised game, September 23rd, Redskins, Washington at home in Cincinnati. On Sunday, October 13th, New York Giants away, Sunday Night Football. Thursday, November 11th, Baltimore away, prime. And what's interesting, some of these are back-to-back with 4:25 kickoffs, a 4:25 kickoff with Kansas City before the Washington game. There's Cleveland. They play Cleveland between the Sunday Night Football game, then Philadelphia as a 4:25 game. 2 nationally, basically at least regionally and nationally televised games in 3 weeks. And then Baltimore prime at in November at 8:15. The very next week, the LA Chargers 4:25, and then you get into December. Dallas Monday Night Football 8:15. 2 weeks later, in December, Thursday prime, Cleveland in Cincinnati. I mean, they've got the Bengals dispersed through the entire season. September, October, November, December. It's like they're gonna get their dose of the Cincinnati Bengals on a regular basis, and that's nothing but great for Cincinnati.
Well, Bengals are becoming a household sort of named brand team. But I said a couple of years ago, this is the golden age, I think, for Cincinnati Bengals fans, despite the fact they went to 2 Super Bowls in the 80s, Dave. You remember those days. This run here, I think, is really on par with maybe some of the best years in franchise history, to be honest with you.
Right.
And I know we've had a couple of quarterbacks that have been league MVPs in Kenny Anderson and Boomer Esiason. I think those years are still in the future for Burrow. I think he's going to be a league MVP before it's said and done. I think he's going to win a championship before it's all said and done. He and the team, right? It's a real good, well-rounded locker room with a great coaching staff that has built a phenomenal culture. So all of those things have elevated the franchise to where, look, I've worked in this business for a long time, and I've always been that guy having to, sort of defend the Bengals when television executives are like, we don't want to have to go there. We don't know if they're going to be still winning by the end of the year. Why would we want to put them on the schedule? If you're going to put them on the schedule, put them on the schedule early in the year while they're still have a decent record. I've heard all of those things.
Yeah.
But those things are, I'm telling you, they're of the past. People now speak glowingly of the Cincinnati Bengals as a team. And it's not just Joe Burrow. It is the Jamar Chases, right? It is the Trey Hendrickson. They love T. Higgins. Every time T. Higgins is asked to step up and be the number one guy, if Jamar can't play, T. Higgins, he gets it done. He gets it done. He played in the Super Bowl. He was heroic the way he started the second half of that game. And the guy just makes plays. He wins the contested catches. The rest of this league is salivating to pry him loose from Joe Burrow and get him off the Cincinnati Bengals roster. But there's so many players that have captured the imagination of the NFL fan base. And that's what really has raised what we call their Q rating, right? Their quotient rating for how likable this team is. When you go into Arrowhead Stadium and you've beaten them, 3 out of the last 4 times you played them when Joe Burrow was on the field.
Right.
That's impressive. And fans notice that. And, I'm just happy to see this team getting their due when it comes to television ratings, when it comes to the league's expectation to put them on these large platforms, and then to watch them come through, not only for the team and the town of Cincinnati, but they're coming through for the league. And I'm telling you right now, that's something that captures the eye of everyone at the highest level of the National Football League.
Bengals have gotten off to tough starts the last couple of years and losing division games, early in those seasons from a scheduling standpoint. They don't have their first division game until week 5. The first 4 weeks of the season, you've got 3 of the 4 teams have a combined record last year of 10-41. The New England Patriots, they opened with, they went 4-13. Kansas City, of course, Super Bowl champion, 425 kick. Patrick Mahomes, 15-4 in the month of September. The Washington, 4-13. Carolina, 2-15. The Bengals have a great shot, Solly, getting off to a solid start, obviously, particularly if they can get that game in Kansas City on the road. Like you said, Joe Burrow, 3-1 record against Patrick Mahomes, the only one that can claim that. I mean, that would be huge to get off to a perfect start in the first 4 games.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. The Bengals have gotten off to slow starts in each of the last 2 or 3 years, really. Right. I think from 2021, 2022, 2 years when they went to the AFC Championship game, but still got off to a slow start. And then again last year. And in those games, they were playing divisional opponents, whether it was Cleveland, whether it was Baltimore, whether it was Pittsburgh, early. and we were getting behind even within the divisional
Yep.
race. You know, in 2022, we were 3-3 inside of the division and ended up having to win those games later in the year just to even break even. Last year, we were 1-5 inside of the division, and it took us winning the very last week without really Cleveland playing their starters, and we were able to get that one win.
Yep.
So that means we're a total of 4-12. Excuse me, 4 out. We won 4 out of 12, I should say. 4-8, I believe, somewhere around there. Over the last 2 years inside of the division, we've got to do better there. There is no doubt about that, because you got to win your division. You want to be a seeded team. I believe the Bengals are good enough to win home field advantage in the playoffs. But Cleveland has a great defense. Pittsburgh has just rearmed their defense and their offensive line.
Yep.
Baltimore always plays with a tough defense. So, look, it is what it is. You got to get off to a faster start. But you mentioned it, starting off at home against New England, got to win that game. Then you go to Kansas City, the defending Super Bowl champion. If you want to be taken serious in this league, go out there and win that game and start off 2-0, and then you will start to hear people talk even more about the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think that would allow us to get off to a good start. I think the schedule is kind of set up to kind of help with that process.
Right. I can't think of how the league could have been more fair and more balanced to the Bengals. You know, I mean, they start off home, away, home, away, home, away. Their first 6 games, you know, it's like it's totally even Steven. Then they have, when they have 2 away games in a row, they have 2 home games in a row, you know, to balance it up. I mean, it's just, and from a travel standpoint, air miles, they've got the second fewest of any team in the National Football League. The only team with fewer air miles coming up next year is Washington. The Bengals, 10,611 air miles. The LA Chargers, 26,803. You know, the most air miles. So, you know, that all has a part in it. You know, Solly, and you look at it. Okay, where's a tough stretch here? Okay, you have on November 7th, you play Thursday night Baltimore away on Prime. And Harbaugh hasn't lost in Baltimore on Thursday night. He hasn't lost in Baltimore at night, period. I mean, Harbaugh at night in Baltimore is like case closed. So then you got the Chargers, but you have your mini bye. You know, you get the extra days, you got the 10 days. And then after you travel to the LA Chargers, which is the longest trip of the year in the air miles, you get your bye week. So, I mean, the league is taking care of them, you know. They have a tough game on the road Thursday night against Baltimore. They get the mini bye. They have to travel. They get 10 days to recover and then travel to California for the Chargers. Tough trip, no doubt. When you come back, you get your bye. I can't think of how they could have been more fair and more balanced to the Bengals. I think the Bengals should be real thankful.
Well, I think it's a product of a couple of things, right? One is that even though the Bengals finished with a winning record last year, they were in 4th place in the AFC North.
Right.
So they get to play the 4th place schedule.
Right.
They get to play the last place team in a couple of those divisions.
Yep.
Washington being one of them, right? As opposed to Dallas or Philadelphia, even though they're going to play those teams as well. But in other divisions, they're taking on the last place opponent, just like the New England Patriots, and you get them week 1. Another thing is geographically, and I tell all my friends in California, because they ask me, why do you still live there? Because they think everyone wants to be in California. Well, I grew up there, and I work all around the country. So I can't tell you how many flights I've been on from LA to Philly, LA to Boston, LA to New York. I said, I'm moving back to Cincinnati. Cincinnati we're smack dab in the middle.
Yep.
We really are. We're still in that Eastern time zone, but we're as far west as you can be and still be in the Eastern time zone. We're as far south as you could be and still be considered a northern city.
Right.
So, so we get to be in a northern city, but we get southern weather in the winter, right? And I start telling all my friends this stuff. And then I also tell them about the ease of life that we have here and the beauty of 4 seasons. And then I have to stop myself because we don't want all those Californians moving here either, right?
Right, I hear you.
And I say that and joke because I am from California, but we want to keep the traffic to a minimum. If you ever been on the 405 in California, then you know what I mean. If you've been on the Hollywood Freeway, you know what I mean. So I say that tongue in cheek, but I just think Cincinnati is a great place to live. I love the people here. I love our geography, and that explains why we have fewer air miles. We're close to every city. I mean, we're close to. If you got to get down south, you can get there rather quickly. If you got to play the teams in the north, I mean, we're just a hop, skip, and a jump to Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Buffalo. So it's really easy. We're so much in the middle. Even if you got to get to the west, this is the launch point that you want to be able to go out west, right? To make that trip just a little bit shorter. So I think we caught a break in those ways. Our geography is perfect, but also we finished fourth place in the AFC North, so we get the fourth place schedule. I mean, so think about it. Somebody's out there saying, "How the Bengals get a fourth place schedule?
Right.
They're too good to get a fourth place schedule." But that's the way the cookie crumbles. You know, we lost our starting quarterback. We're a good enough team where we fought and tried to win as many games as we could. We ended up with a winning record. But we're in a really top-heavy division, right? If you finish 9-8 with a winning record, but yet you're in last place, that tells you that you're amongst a lot of bullies in the AFC North. So every now and then, life it just deals you the right hand. I think it dealt us a pretty good one. Let's see if we can take advantage of it, Dave.
I agree with you, Solly. You know, and just three teams outside the division had winning records on the Bengals schedule in 23. Dallas, Philadelphia, and Kansas City. That's it. But everybody else in the division had a winning record, you know, and let's talk about the division. The bye week comes in week 12, by the way. I think that's second latest in Bengals history. I mean, that's pretty good to get that bye week at that juncture. They finish very balanced in the division as well. There's 3 games in the division before the bye, and then 3 games in 6 weeks after the bye. So they get Pittsburgh twice. They get Pittsburgh right after the bye, and then they have Pittsburgh away. Pittsburgh at home right after the bye. Pittsburgh away, the last game of the season. That could be that could be another nationally televised game. The last 2 weeks, Denver and Pittsburgh, it has not been determined other than Denver's home, Pittsburgh's away. The day, the time, any of that's still up in the air. But the Bengals have 3 division games before the bye, 3 division games after the bye. Pittsburgh, Solly, what'd the league do? The last 8 weeks of the season for the Steelers, 6 division games in 8 weeks. Their whole season is determined, basically, in the last 8 weeks. That's crazy.
Yeah, that I would not like that if I were Mike Tomlin, because you know you can't afford to have, say, an injury at that point in the year. You would love to be able to spread those games out. You're really forcing the team to be as good as they're going to be within that short, condensed period of time. Because if they're not, then they can find themselves, even though they have maybe a decent record, if you don't hold serve inside of your division, you can end up with a winning record and still be on the outside looking in, kind of how we were 1 year ago. So, look, Mike Tomlin, he knows it. You got to love what they did in the draft. You got to love they turned over the entire quarterback room. Just about everyone from the wide receiver room. Calvin Austin and George Pickens are the only wide receivers back from last year's team. So, but they're going to put together a really good football team. They've got a real good looking roster. All 4 teams in the AFC North have really good roster. They have really good coaches. I mean, Kevin Stefanski is a 2-time Coach of the Year award winner.
Right.
And he had done nearly as much as our coach, Zach Taylor, who's done so much better, who's won more games, taking his team twice to an AFC title game and to a Super Bowl, and we can't get any mentions for Coach of the Year. I don't even know how to even give out those awards. Cleveland is getting the sympathy vote for sure because Myles Garrett, I think, finished with 14 sacks, and Trey Hendrickson had more sacks than he did. It wasn't considered for Defensive Player of the Year. T.J. Watt, who led the league in sacks, didn't even get a whiff. They just took the trophy and gave it to Myles Garrett. they just took the trophy and gave it to Kevin Stefanski. I'm wondering what the heck's going on here? How come we can't get any love for our guys who are finishing, with more wins, more achievements, but still should be considered for those awards? But look, Cleveland can have the awards. I would rather us represent the conference in the Super Bowl this year. Guess where? Back home for Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase in the Bayou down in New Orleans. Right?
That's big.
Think about it.
That's big. All right, so how about this? And what do you think of this scenario? The Bengals schedule the opposing teams 5 new head coaches: New England, Washington, Carolina, L.A. Chargers, Tennessee. 5 new head coaches. And then an interim head coach who's, now obviously established himself with the Raiders. Yeah. And in some of these cases, will the rookie be playing that early? In the first 4 games for the Bengals, 3 of the first 4 teams they play, rookie head coaches. The only one that's not is Kansas City. They got New England, Washington, Carolina. 3 of the first 4 games that they play. The Chargers are before the bye. 4 new head coaches before the bye week, and then Tennessee's in the final 6 games. But do you think that's a big edge, particularly early in the season when the first 4 games, 3 new head coaches? Do you think that's an edge, or is that overrated?
No, that's not overrated. Look, anytime there's new learning, Dave, there's going to be some struggles. So think about Gerard Mayo, first time out, coaching the real game. And if they plan on starting, I can't imagine they're going to start Drake May.
Right.
I just can't imagine. They've got, if you're a Bengals fan, you can hope for Drake May. I just don't see it happening.
Yep.
People are way too smart. You got to start Jacoby Brissett in that game. You're not going to get a rookie quarterback in the opening day game. It's just not. Who would start a rookie quarterback on the road against a perennial playoff team in the AFC North like the Cincinnati Bengals? Gerard Mayo knows better.
Right.
Not going to do it. And Drake May, there's some growth. He's kind of green in some areas, but Jacoby Brissett is a viable, veteran quarterback in this league that's capable of winning. So I don't think the Bengals should be looking for the Patriots to do them any favors. It's going to be hard enough, as you have already mentioned, with the coaching staff really getting their first work together in a regular season game in New England. It's the beginning of a new era, right? The post-Belichick era. Gerard Mayo, I think, is going to be a good coach. You and I both know that's going to take time. So new learning curve there for many of the players and for that coaching staff. And for those teams that are playing with a new coaching staff, I do think it takes some time to get your act together. I will say this is the NFL. Every single team, teams are different in the second half of the year than who you see in the first half of the year. That's just the NFL. That's how quickly teams change. Because we don't have a real preseason anymore, because there's no 2-a-day practices anymore, teams come in less prepared to play real football in the month of September. So they're really green. I mean, look at us last year when we went to Cleveland. To me, that was the worst season opener I've ever seen for a Cincinnati Bengals team. Right. And that's saying a lot. Because in the 90s, there was some bad football being
stinkers,
played.
Man. Yep.
But that game last year up in Cleveland, I know it was windy. You could say whatever you want. Burrow had the calf, didn't practice a whole lot during training camp. But that's the point. There's a lot of starters who the teams don't want to risk them, Dave. They don't want to put them in these preseason games. They were like, if we're going to lose somebody, we're going to lose them in doing the real deal.
Right.
So the tackling is not as crisp. The route running and the timing of the passing game is not as crisp as they need to be. Football's a little loose. So by the time you get to the first month, teams are starting to really, okay, now you're seeing what you got. By the time you get to the second half of the season, now they're cooking. And these teams are totally different. I'll give you an example. Take the Arizona Cardinals last year. They were one of the worst teams. Remember how the Bengals went out there and just smacked them around and we kind of got back on track. That was I call it the Cam Taylor-Britt game.
There you go.
He saved us in that game just before halftime, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, think about the Cardinals. The Cardinals beat 3 playoff teams last year. They beat the Dallas Cowboys early, embarrassed them. And then they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers out in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh ended up going to the playoffs. And then a 10-1 team who got off to a 10-1 start. Arizona beats the Philadelphia Eagles because Jonathan Gannon, the head coach there, had been their defensive coordinator. And the Cardinals got Kyler Murray didn't play for them, remember, in the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
But in the second year, the Cardinals were an entirely different team. And they beat 3 teams that ended up going to the playoffs. And it wasn't even, I'm telling you, it wasn't even close. They beat them all and beat them all handedly. And because they were a different team. And that's the NFL. And I think that's what we ought to keep in mind, that what you get in that first month, or maybe in those first 6 to 8 weeks, it's going to be totally different by the time we turn the dial and enter the second half of the season.
Solly, do you think 12 wins is necessary to win the division, or this division is so competitive 11 would get it done?
I would feel more comfortable if you got 12. I think that'll get it.
Yep.
11, you're going to be playing, down to the very last week to get that answer.
Right.
Out what's going on. And
right.
And the seeding, I think, is just so important in the AFC. Think about Miami last year. Had they been able to beat Buffalo last game of the year, not only do they win the division, they're not going to Kansas City and freezing their tails off.
Right.
They're gonna be hosting a game as opposed to going on the road and playing up in Buffalo or in Kansas City. Well, for Miami, that means everything. For the Chargers, that means everything. You and I both know, if the Chargers get a home field advantage in January in La Jolla, they used to play down in San Diego, but now they're in Los Angeles.
Right.
I mean, it's beautiful in January, right?
Yeah.
But if they have to come east of the Mississippi River to play the Kansas City Chiefs or the Cincinnati Bengals or the Baltimore Ravens or the Pittsburgh Steelers, even the Cleveland Browns or Buffalo, I'm not going to say they don't have a shot, but I'm giving those home teams that are used to playing in those conditions the advantage. That's for sure.
No question. Can't let you get out, Solly, without your take on the Bengals draft. I mean, a lot of people, oh, man, well, it wasn't sexy, but I thought it was very, very solid, man. They addressed a lot of needs, and, some of it's blue collar, but you gotta have those components, man. What did you think overall of the Bengals draft, those 10 picks?
Anytime that you lead off your draft and you're getting linemen, offensive, defensive linemen, right? We got 2 interior defensive linemen in this draft, and we got arguably I think the best and the most talented offensive tackle in the draft. Now he does have to begin to polish his game.
Yep.
But look, this guy has got every tool that you would want. He's got the size, and he's got the stuff you can't coach. And then he has the things that, in terms of, he can handle the bull rush. He can handle speed around the edges. He's got great feet for a big man, 6'7", 340 pounds. He can handle it all.
Yep.
And he's a great run blocker. And we got him with the 18th overall pick. I was reading one article, A to Z Sports Film Room. One of the analysts said that he picked Amarius Mims as the most likely player in the 2024 draft to make the Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Now that's lofty, but guess what? You know how certain you have to be to even mention something like that about a guy who hadn't even played a snap, only started 8 games, in college. But look, he was at Georgia.
Yeah. He
was playing in a rotation. He practiced every day against some of the best players in college football. Many of them are right now playing in the NFL.
5 of those defensive linemen were first-round draft picks during his stay there at Georgia.
And
5 of them.
And he handled them every day in practice.
Absolutely.
For all the reports.
Yeah.
So, look, that is never going to be sexy. I remember when Dallas had their 3 first-round picks on their offensive line. All the people in Dallas were screaming and crying.
Right.
You show me an offensive line that has multiple first-round picks on it, like the Detroit Lions. You show me a team like you're looking at a team that's gonna win a lot of games, Dave. You know that.
Right.
When you start to have talent on your offensive line, size and aggressive ability, your ability to win the physical battle at the line of scrimmage it matters. Now, we've got tackles that are in the 6'7", 6'8", 340, 350-pound range. Who's going to be able to handle Myles Garrett? Who's going to handle T.J. Watt? Who's going to handle the defensive players for the Baltimore Ravens? You need offensive linemen. And then on the other side, you better get yourself some really big guys that can handle the line of scrimmage defensively as well. I feel good about this draft, and I think we stole one in the third round with Jermaine Burton. I've been telling everybody, pay attention to this guy, because I think playing with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and with a Joe Burrow, sometimes it's not about when you go in the draft, it's where you go. And if you are a wide receiver and you got the talents of a Jermaine Burton, who averaged, I think, 16 yards per catch for his career. He averaged
18. He had 20 in a couple of seasons. I mean, 20, and then 18 is last. I mean, it was crazy. Like 17, almost 18 yards, whatever it was. It was nuts. Let's put it that way. And
crazy
the thing is,
number.
He was mentored by T.J. Hurstmanzada. When I watch him run routes, he's got the change of speed. He makes every 10-yard out different. He doesn't run it the same way every time, you know. He's got some route running ability to him. I'm like, and you had to scour the tape to find drops. I agree with you, man. This kid is the real deal.
Hey, you saw Zach. Zach's a pretty cool guy. Zach Taylor, Bengals head coach.
Yep.
He was pounding. He got it.
Jumped
when that
up out of
pick
his
came
chair.
in, oh my good, because he knows what he has.
Yep.
He knows that this guy is going to get a lot of one-on-one coverage, and nobody is going to be able to stay with him. And you're lucky if you can pull his flag after the catch. He's going to create yards after the catch. He's a big play threat, and he's going to be plugged in there where Tyler Boyd, who was so good for us, but this guy's faster. He's quicker.
Yep.
He's more explosive, and it's got a nice pair of hands and a great route runner. And so he gets to play with Joe Burrow.
Yep.
I mean, I don't care if I go in the first round. If you told me, if I was him, if you told me I was going in the third round, but to the Bengals with Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase, I guarantee you that's one that he could accept. I think he's going to be a real find for us. And I think Troy Walters are going to polish him up really, really quickly.
I agree, 100,000%, Sully. And I agree with your assessment. I mean, we already talked about the AFC North. The only division that had every team with a winning record last year, every single one. It's the best division in football. In my opinion, the most physical division in football. And when you're talking physicality, you're talking trenches, line of scrimmage. Get better there with as many guys as you can. I agree with you 100,000%. This draft was solid, my man, solid.
And guess what? Good friend of mine, he's a tight ends coach in the NFL.
Yep.
And he talked about Eric Ald and said he was the third best tight end on the board. He gave Stennett the number 2 tight end number. He's playing with the Commanders. And then we know Brock Bowers was the number 1 tight end. But, Eric, he's a Cincinnati guy. He played high school football here. He's going to be really good for this football team. We end up getting 2 of the top 5 tight ends in the draft. So I think Loughlin's going to be a really good player as well. I think the Bengals have loaded up when it comes to our depth. We do have a good roster, and they did such a good job in free agency filling in the safety positions that we didn't have to reach for anyone.
Yep.
And all of the players in this year's draft just going to add to our depth, offensive line, defensive line, in the secondary, at the wide receiver position. It's been really good in terms of the way that they sort of piecemealed and used the draft to build up our depth all around the roster and for the entire football team. I was very pleased with it, very pleased.
I agree. I mean, 10 picks, and whenever this group of coaches and organizational people, scouts and all, when they draft somebody, they have a definitive role in mind. It's not just, let's draft him because not only best player on the board necessarily, but, man, we have a definitive role for this guy if we draft him and plug him in that role. And if he expands it, so be it. But, man, they have definite roles for all 10 of these guys, and it's going to be exciting to see how they compete. Like you said, the roster depth is there, and that's what you That's what you like to have as well. Solly.
I'm sorry. One thing, Amarius Mims. Think about him. Think about how big he is. Think about our offensive line getting off the bus on some of these road trips. Think about that.
Sell tickets.
That's impressive. It really is impressive. I was talking to Coach Pollock, and he talked about, hey, he wants. This is not about 5 frat guys. He wants 5 mentally, physically tough guys. I think he's finally got the 5 he was looking for.
I agree. And, man, it's going to be it's the new Cincinnati skyline. If you're not 6'8", 350, don't bother coming, man. You know? I mean, it's the land of the giants. That offensive line room, watching them in OTAs, that is one humongous group. I'm like, all these guys are their playing weight's 100 pounds heavier than back in the day when we had to stay at such a low playing weight as offensive linemen. It's crazy how big these dudes are. But like you said, Solly, they're not stiffs, man. They're fluid. They're moving. I mean, they can run. They run with good running form. It's not, these guys aren't big stiffs. It's crazy, man.
That's great. They block out the sun, man. Block out the sun.
Total eclipse. Solly, enjoyed the heck out of it. You are the best, my man.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate you. Go Bengals. Who they, baby?
Who they? Talking football with Solly makes it a good day. Yes, sir. Here we go. Have a great one. Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realize self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
Opportunity knocking.